Okay, we're rolling.
Okay, well, thanks guys for joining this webinar today. I have a few issues that we're going to cover. Stats, obviously, look at the broader market, what's happening in just the broader cryptocurrency market, then move into what's happening at the master nodes, then actually take a step back out into the larger global and national economy, and then talk about some things that we're getting ready to do in the upcoming months in presenting at various conferences across the world. So, and we'll also talk about some of the updates in terms of what we have in the software and different meetings we have. So with that said, let me do a quick refresh here before I share my screen. Let's see, I want to share. Launch meeting. Did I minimize that? Let's see. I want to stop the video. I want to maximize it. There we go. Share, and then I am going to share my desktop. And once again, I always have the goal of trying to keep this short, but if it goes a little long, that's fine. I'm shooting for a target of 30 minutes today. And then we'll see what that does for us. Okay, can you all see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now that you see my screen here, I'm going to go over where we are in terms of our market cap. Just looking at the overall cryptocurrency market, we're at 198 billion. This puts us at the time frame of around the first part of November of 2017. The market overall is generally down. This looks like it's trying to make some recovery, but as we can see, particularly with Bitcoin, it's at 6,300, down, say last week or so it was around 7,400, but it's lost almost $1,000 in its nominal value. But it's the case that the altcoins have been getting beat up these last few weeks here, and we're not immune to that. And we see it particularly when we begin to look at LightPay coin and Logis coin. So when looking at LPC, we have a daily income of around $18. The nominal price is $1.38, which is one of our all-time lows, which is one close to our all-time low. I think our all-time low is around $1.66 per LPC. We have a volume of about 250,000 with a market cap of 3.5 million, down 5.18%. ROI 74 days. Average reward is 1 day, 5 hours, and some change. The number of active master nodes have increased, and obviously it does when there's a big pullback like we've had over these past couple of weeks here. But then we've dropped below that 70%, which is somewhat concerning. We'd like to have that goal. Well, personally, it's a personal goal for me to have it over 70% in terms of master nodes locked up. But one could argue, hey, we should have some more confirmation nodes or amount staking to protect against, let's say, a 51% attack. But it's the case we're at 68% now, down a few percentage points from our all-time high of around 72-73% in terms of the number of coins locked up in master nodes. Master node worth $1,383, with that translates to roughly 0.22 BTC. And as I mentioned before, this is one of our all-time lows relative to the dollar. And also, when you don't look at that and you just compare it to BTC, we also see that we're breaking the trend that we used to have here in terms of that positive trend upward. So this looks similar. If you were to just move this, just look at it and not look at, say, this is LPC. This is similar to how Bitcoin has been moving over the past, say, since December of 2017. You know, it's in a bear trend, it's moving more in a downward direction. We do have some some evidence coming from the larger economy, what could be contributing to this. But at the same time, there are some things happening at the macroeconomic level outside of cryptocurrencies that I think we should pay attention to over these next couple weeks and the next few months as well. So that's with LPC. And let's go to, I want to apologize. I have my fax machine going. Let me see. Give me a quick pause here. Okay, I'm back. Sorry, guys. So here we are on Lotus Coin, $256 on a daily payout of 19.89 LPC. The nominal price is $12.91 roughly, with a $2.3 million in volume, 4.2 million in overall market cap, up 7.82%. ROI is 50 days, roughly under 2 months for full return on investment. Average payout time is 3 hours and 30 minutes. Active masternodes 206. The percentage of coins locked up in masternodes is 62%, with a masternode value of 12,900. We see it still on a positive trend, but it's showing signs, just as all altcoins have in these last few weeks here, of the downward movement. And what are some of the things that could be causing that? Well, we do see that it's the case that the SEC will be making a decision on the ETF next week. We also have a couple other things happening as well that could give some indication of where we're moving in the near term and also in the long term. So, and once again, I want to just make a quick announcement here. It's off on the side we made a contribution to the Salvation Army in Greece, and then they gave a shout out to us on Twitter in terms of our contribution in helping out to feed some of the refugees that are actually coming into the country. So it's the case that we're helping to make a difference. It's not only about the money at the end of the day. Money's great, but how are we making the world a better place? Looking at how cryptocurrencies first came into existence, it was as a consequence of the financial crisis of 2008. And there's some strong evidence to suggest now that we may be moving in a similar direction, considering our monetary policy, considering some of the global economic issues that are occurring. And I just want to give you guys some insights as to what may be happening there. But I just briefly wanted to cover the statistics for LPC and LGS. I'll just take a quick pause to see if there are any questions around LPC and LGS before we move into some of the larger issues as it relates to the macro level economy, more global economy, not only here in the US, but also abroad.
Sure. So there's one question at this point, and it's kind of a general question about LightPay coin.
Sure.
The question is, it's a comment followed by a question. The comment is, I find that the roadmap is very light. The questions are you going to detail it, more objectives other than ATMs, timelines? I think this question asker is sort of looking to see if there's going to be any more fleshing out of the roadmap or things like that.
Sure. And we often, and thanks for the question, one of the things we are updating both the roadmap, and we're moving along the path to update the website in addition to actually doing work. So we're in a position now where we're coordinating teams. I myself am actually doing some of the initial designs on the point of sale device. building out the infrastructure, all the tools that we will be using in the process. It's the case now that the blockchain or the LPC payment network, the blockchain, it's just a database. We still need to build the middleware. We still need to build the user interfaces. So there are a lot of things that still need to be done. And we're moving into that work now. Even though it's the case, I'm more involved. It looks as if I'm more involved now with community activities more so than with the actual technology development. And I'm looking to change that, and we'll depend on the moderators to do that. But for the most part, we are updating the roadmap. At the same time, we are making periodic updates to the white paper as well. We are adding, for instance, some of the task orders. We also have the details around the development of the point of sale device, but it's the case that we are not disclosing aspects related to its development for a variety of different reasons. One in particular is, you always have competition. If it's the case that people can download your white paper and see what you're doing, then that doesn't necessarily put you in a strong competitive position by disclosing that information. So I will attempt to balance giving you information around the development process without necessarily disclosing everything that we do. So I think you should have some, you should be able to realize that it makes sense not to necessarily disclose everything, even though I do understand that some investors may want to know more information about what's going on. If it's the case you want to know more detailed information, give me a call. You can call the number that's on the website. You could also send me a DM, but just know I don't want to be overwhelmed with DMs and phone calls because it's the case I'd like to be able to do development work. So I'm looking to shift more from, once again, the community activities, like say, for instance, these most recent voting competitions for CoinX, for LPC and LGS. We have over 1,500 votes across, particularly with LGS, and all 1,500 votes need to be verified and need to be paid out. So it's the case we're a little behind on that. We're about 30% through paying for the 1,500 votes for all the members who did vote for LGS, and we do appreciate that. But those are community-based activities that's draining a lot of my time. And now it's the case, a lot of development work needs to be done. So I'm having not as much time as I would like to do development work, but it's the case, in addition to that community-based work, the development work, then also keeping up to date with the roadmap. We have to be able to balance everything that we can do. We don't want to be stretched and actually just burn out, but at the same time, we have to strike some balance. So just bear with us as we move through the process, and we'll keep you up to date. Make sure you tune into the webinars, because that's where you receive the most up-to-date information, and we have hours of content.
Okay. The next question is, I want to know why LPC investors were not informed about the launch of LGS from the outset. There's another kind of follow-up from that. From the outset, I'm referring to the launch of LPC / early days of LPC, when the masternode value was upwards of 1 BTC. I feel betrayed by the fact that another coin was launched, cannibalizing investments from LPC.
Well, I respect your opinion, but it's the case that members were informed, and this was something we had discussed in advance of launching LPC. It wasn't just a whim idea that was just decided in a weekend. It was a case, it was mentioned. We did talk about it in the webinars. I'm not quite sure the degree to which you watched the webinars on a daily or on a weekly basis, but we did discuss Logis Coin. We did discuss the way in which it did fit into our plans for being able to distribute point of sale devices, ATM machines, and at the same time, what were some of the reasons, in addition to helping us to be able to distribute the products that we develop within LPC, but also community involvement as well. So there were several webinars that we had talking about LGS. We also had meetings where we talked to the community about LGS as well. So I don't think it was a surprise, and I don't think you should feel betrayed. Um, I would recommend looking at, because right now I know the perception that you're feeling. The perception is that, hey, no, we have LGS, which is now $12,000 per LPC, but per masternode, and LPC is at roughly 10 times that at $1,300. Understanding that an oversupply is still being put into the market on LPC, which is placing a lot of downward pressure still on LPC. It's the case that we're looking for it to rebound as the payments to the master nodes and the confirmation nodes begin to decrease as we move, and that will introduce scarcity into the market, and we would see some recovery. And this is something I talked about several weeks ago and that we will continue to go through, so I can understand the immediate perception that you have that because the price is down on LPC, now you're feeling bad that the LGS is doing well, considering that it's on its ramp up in terms of its payment reward cycle. And looking at the schedule, you go to the Logis Coin's website, you can see how the rewards are increasing, and it hasn't reached a point where there's an oversupply in the market as is the case right now with the oversupply of LPC. But it will go through its cycle where LPC has gone through. And right now, I do believe LPC, once again, it's highly undervalued considering everything that we've done so far, considering the oversupply that's put into the market, which is pre-programmed in. So we're in the lowest cycle that we're going to see in terms of the oversupply being put in the market, putting downward pressure on LPC. So I can understand why you may perhaps feel betrayed. But if you attended the webinars and listened in how we rolled out LGS and how it fit into our overall strategy, you should not feel betrayed. But it's one of those things. Some people feel betrayed, some people not, but it's the case that that was not necessarily our intent to blindside you, but there were a lot of circumstances that led to the development of LGS, and it made sense to be able to do it.
Okay. There's a related question here, which is, are there any new projects that we should expect to hear about in the near future?
There are some things that are in the works where we are helping or giving some consultations to some other projects that are looking to launch, but not necessarily affiliated with our team. But yet it's the case that they're looking to, for instance, an exchange. They're looking to launch a project sometime, not this month, not this week. We'll tell you more as it happens. So it's the case that we are beginning to provide some services. But once again, this is all consistent. Everything that we do is consistent with the overall strategy of LPC. So just don't think we're just going out and just launching another project in an attempt to do a money grab. But it's the case that we do have strategic partners in place. We are being consulted by our exchange partners, and they are looking to launch their project really soon. So it's the case that that's something that's coming down the line. So full disclosure, now that you know, it's the case that we are consulting with an exchange that's looking to launch their own project. So more details as it gets fleshed out, but it's very early stage.
Okay. And then question from the community, when should we expect to see stability regarding LightPay coin price?
Sure. The things I recommend that you do is continue to look at the profit diagram and the payment schedules. Because right now there's an oversupply that's in the market. Because there's an oversupply that's not necessarily commensurate with demand now, you have downward pressure on the price. But there are a few things now I'd like to be able to get into that will look to change demand. In my opinion, will look to change demand because it's going to put new expectations on this newly found asset class. When you look at digital commodities, CFTC, they look at cryptocurrencies as digital commodities, not necessarily as money, but as a commodity. And I'm just saying now it's a digital commodity, and it is. So that's one of the things that I would ask for you to be attentive to. What's happening in the global economy? what's happening in terms of at a macro level with LPC in particular, as it relates to being able for us to deliver on the value that we're proposed to deliver on our roadmap, at the same time looking at the payment schedules to the master nodes. So it's a lot of different factors, but for the most part, I'll try to keep you guys in tune to how I'm thinking about LPC in terms of oversupply right now, the market being bearish overall when you look at cryptocurrencies, and looking at the global economy. So with that said, I can begin to just move into some of the things that I see happening globally that I think will impact us in the near term and in the long term as we move forward.
Sounds good.
Okay. With that said, looking at the economy more at a macro level, even though it's the case that we are in a position now where the SEC is trying to put the U.S. economy back on a solid footing to a neutral interest rate. On the 25th of September, not the SEC, but the Federal Reserve is going to increase interest rates, and that has a tendency to put some uncertainty in the economy. Anytime there's uncertainty in the national economy, it's the case that people look to put their assets in a variety of safe places. Some people put their money in gold. Some individuals will choose to invest in silver or copper, or in the case of now we have this new asset class of cryptocurrencies. Some people will begin to move their assets into cryptocurrencies. In addition to the interest rate that will be raised, and it's almost 100% certain that the Federal Reserve will raise rates because we've been at artificially low interest rates for a period of time. In addition to that interest rate hike that's certain to occur next week, we're now in a trade war without question. President Trump has put a 10% tariffs on 200 billion of goods that will increase to 25% next year. And these are just the headlines. And I would recommend you guys to pay attention to what's happening in the global economy, because it's going to impact you, and I think in a positive way, because there's uncertainty in various economies and different markets across the world. It's going to begin to swing in our direction. We've been in a bear market for well over almost 9 months now. So it's the case that it looks like a few of these things, when you talk about the interest rate being raised next week, when you begin to talk about the trade war that's currently taking place and the escalation of the trade war, there are a few things that you should begin to be concerned about, because it's the case when more tariffs are being placed on goods coming in from various countries, and particularly when you begin to look at goods coming in from China, that's going to disrupt a variety of different things. It's already impacting in the Midwest jobs. It's impacting how consumer inflation, in a sense. So it's one of the things that we should begin to look out for, not only because of the issues around the increase in the interest rate, and now you're going to have some tightening of credit. It's going to be more difficult to obtain credit. We may have some organizations, because of the tariffs, they may have to lay off people. And at the same time, the goods being sold to you, they're going to be a bit more expensive. And one of the things that keeps the economy going is spending and transactions that take place between two parties. When you have money and you want to purchase goods and services, if there are tariffs being placed on any of those goods or any those products, then it's going to be more expensive, and that will reduce the extent to which you are engaging in economic transactions, and that will have an impact in growth in the overall economy. And because of the interest rates that will definitely be raised next week, now the Federal Reserve is now beginning to think how the trade war is really going to impact the economy. We may not necessarily see anything in the short term, but when I mean short term, like this week and next week, but yet in the intermediate term, when you begin to look at the Q4 2018, you may begin to see some cracks. That's why is the case. The Federal Reserve, they thought they were going to do 4 interest rate hikes this year. Now they're beginning to question how the trade war is going to impact the economy. So, and even the economists said that they were wrong, and now see the trade disputes between the U.S. and China escalating with potential economic ramifications. Guys, ladies and gentlemen, we should not be in a position where we play checkers and we see a news headline happening, and this was back in July. What they see now is something that's would have a much greater impact than what they anticipated. So, and one of the things that they see that the trade war will impact is supply chain. So they basically say 450 billion, the list becomes comprehensive, and the supply chain damage seems almost inevitable. So when you begin to think about supply chain, we have one of our members within Colin in Logiscoin, who actually sits in Shanghai. And it's the case, different companies will have to think, different organizations will have to consider where they get their raw products or get their goods from, because of this trade war that is escalating. So these are just some of the things that we should begin to think about, and how do we position ourselves as a company that is able to provide supply chain services to various clients in this space. So even with this said, taking into consideration the increase in interest rates, and now the Federal Reserve is thought they were going to raise interest rates in December. Now they're reconsidering that because of the trade war that's escalating at this point. And now it's sure to impact supply chain. Some economists think that rearranging or orienting ourselves for a trade war and preparing and getting new supply chains in place within 6 months, that's a bit unrealistic, which may put some more pressure in terms of our overall economy. So these are just some of the things that we have to think about as we move forward. And I think it's a positive for us not to speculate on chaos happening. Even though cryptocurrencies were developed as a consequence of the financial crisis, we have to be in a position where we are understanding this, and there's going to be an impact in cryptocurrencies as a result of this. This is almost certain. So we have to take this into consideration, not only in terms of trying to raise interest rates so that we would be prepared for another recession. There are some people saying it's almost imminent now, in terms considering 10 years since the financial crisis. But at the same time, don't necessarily say, okay, yeah, we're going to have a disaster, and as a result, everybody is coming into the cryptocurrency space as a result. We're just an asset class, because we're a new asset class. Some people or some organizations are innovative and they're already in the space. And as a result of these global economic events taking place, particularly the trade war, and when you begin to look at the United States trying to return back to a level of normalcy after the great financial crisis, because we're still not there. This is something that's going to be more positive for this new asset class. Any other questions in general around that before I move into some of the things that we are doing in the coming weeks?
So there is an open question. I think it's more about sort of future activities. So maybe we'll hold that until you're kind of finished with your kind of discussion.
Okay. In terms of future activities, we have been invited. There's a colleague here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area who knows of our work in this space, and we have actually been invited to sit on a round table for complex supply chain opportunities for future professionals at the University of North Texas at Dallas. This is an event where we'll talk about what we're doing in the cryptocurrency space, not only as it relates to Lightpay Coin, but as we have created and are moving forward with Logiscoin as well, to talk about how we are beginning to disrupt the traditional supply chain. Particularly when you talk about transparency, when you begin to talk about analytics, recognizing bottlenecks within the process, and at the same time, opportunity cost because of the inability of some traditional supply chains to properly recognize provenance and chain of custody and ensuring the quality of goods. So this is an area where we will be on the panel on this roundtable. But it's the case, one of my former colleagues in the Dallas-Fort Worth area saw that we were doing work in cryptocurrency and within supply chain, and he reached out and asked us to be on this roundtable. So that's something that we're looking forward to, and that's going to be on October the 10th. Now, there's another event that we will be taking place on October the 24th. Colin, who sits in Shanghai, this is in his area in which he lives, we have already been invited to give a presentation around what we're doing in the blockchain supply chain management space. So Colin will be one of the featured speakers at this particular event that's on October the 24th. So we look forward to engage, and all of this is against the backdrop of what's happening right now in when we talk about the trade war and the disruptions in global supply chains, particularly as it relates to goods coming out of Asia Pacific and China specifically. So this is something I think we're looking to position ourselves not to necessarily leverage chaos, but look at it to our advantage. How can we begin to put ourselves in a good position where people see us as a next generation organization in providing supply chain services that are higher quality than what organizations are typically used to in this space. So those are just two of the events. I will be October the 5th. I'll also be at the University of Central Florida again, a second phase in having interactions with the industrial and organizational psychology students, which includes business students, which may include programmers from the University of Central Florida. It's the case, one of the students, one of the investors will be coming along as well, recording the footage. We do have the recording from the first interaction that we had with the Human Factors program, primarily UI, UX individuals who had expertise in UI and UX, and we had that interaction. So now this is with a different group within the university, and we're also looking to have some meetings with individuals within the business school as well as we move that forward, and that's going to be on October the 5th. So I'll pause right there in terms of the events, and then I'll take general questions, and then we can move it forward.
Okay, so I'm going to do these in a kind of funky order, just based on their kind of relevance to what you've been talking about. So there's a question: does the University of Central Florida already accept Light Pay as a payment method for courses and different things related to the university?
Okay, at this point, no. So we're moving along that path. That's something that we have planned to interact with the students. It's the case that we are already put in for our institutional review board to be able to pay students in Light Pay coin, and because they will have Light Pay coin either on their phones, the iOS, which right now we're in the last phases now. We're getting ready to launch our wallets, our iOS mobile wallets, which is a good thing. So I'm glad this question came up. So we're able to, we're getting it in the institutional review board. It's just a group of professors and individuals from the community that will evaluate what we're getting ready to do and make sure that it's safe. So that's really the only reason for the institutional review board. But our goal is to be able to pay students in Light Pay coin, and also engage in all of the vendors who are already on campus to begin to accept Light Pay coin. We are actually in a position now where we're having some talks with another university, can't reveal them just yet, another institution of higher learning, whereby they already accept cryptocurrency. So if it's the case that we're able to get that cryptocurrency embedded within that university, and it's something that I really want to kind of hold it tight to the vest until it's actually in place, but there's something that we're beginning to move down the path along. And Patrick and I know he's privy to those conversations in terms of what we're attempting to do in that work as well. And we will be, I'll say that for the next announcement, because I know it's 10:35 and I want to be able to answer all the questions.
Cool.
We'll just dive in on a tangent.
Good deal. No, that's all right. So question about like trade wars and things like that. Do you think the trade war will have an impact on LGS since it's a logistics project?
I think to the degree that we have it's going to be a long-term play. It's not going to be something that's this week or even a month out, but we're going to feel, both the United States and China, both companies and consumers, they're going to feel the impact of the trade war. It's no doubt that having billions and billions of dollars being of goods and services and products coming into the country, tariffs being placed on those, it's going to have an impact on consumer spending. It's going to have an impact on B2B spending, how the U.S. Will actually get supplies or purchase products from China. That's going to have an impact. Because it's the case, an indirect impact is the reconfiguration of supply chains, because it may be too expensive. But I think what the Chinese have done, they have begun to weaken their currency somewhat to absorb the impact of goods and products coming into the country. So that's something that they're beginning to do to try to brace the impact on their country. But long term, because they've recently retaliated against the tariffs that have been placed on their goods. So they're placing tariffs on U.S. goods as well. So it's going to have an impact when you begin to look at the jobs report back in November. Upcoming job reports in November, I think December the 7th, that's when they announced the jobs report. And you're going to see some weakening in the economy because of Logis Coin and us being able to build out the first use case within LPC and being in a position to distribute out the point of sale devices. I think at that point, because most of that development will be occurring in that November timeframe, to be prepared to do the first use case in the distribution of the beta product for LPC, we would be in a position to take on more clients. The first goal was to be able to demonstrate this first use case with LPC, LGS, and the distribution of point-of-sale devices and ATMs. But if it's the case that we're able to accelerate our schedule, looking at the first quarter of 2019 and moving forward, we should be in a very good position to help clients who are looking to reconfigure their supply chain to brace for or absorb the impact of this trade war. So I do think it's something that we can have a positive impact, LGS. So that's my response. Somewhat long, but.
Okay. Next one, will we follow know your customer rules in order to get to ATM machines and get them mass adopted? That's part one. Part two is there are many other projects trying to follow the same path, like 10X. What makes you sure that we can do things differently?
Sure. First, I'll address the issue of KYC. There are some places where we will have to follow some regulatory compliance concerns, such as KYC. And we've done that already as it relates to listing on some exchanges. Even though you could have a coin, you could have a project, and then you still have to submit your documentation for an individual who is running the project or the team that's running the project having to submit KYC. I know some people like the aspects of being anonymous and being able to send anonymous transactions because it introduces fungibility. You don't necessarily know where one particular coin came from because of the aspects of the anonymity. That's a good thing, but in this regulatory environment, I think at the end of the day, we do have to be able to comply with certain rules if we're going to be successful. So we'll take it as a step-by-step, look at the degree to which it may impact the privacy of not only individuals who are engaging in anonymous transactions, but also institutions as well. So my main point is, we're not going to just put up a wall and say, no, we're not going through KYC. I think it's in the best interest of the investors looking at how we would like for this to be a long-term project. And I think we do have to cross over somewhat into the traditional financial markets and would have to be able to comply with their rules. At the same time, I'm a big privacy advocate, and I believe in that because I do have that strong belief in privacy. I'm looking to advocate for us in our best position, but at the same time, necessarily walk a fine line in being able to comply with KYC, and particularly as it relates to some banking issues, because we're going to need it unless we just totally develop our entirely new network in an area where banking is very difficult to come by. When you talk about the entire continent of Africa, we have billions of people who are unbanked. And as a result, because of our relationships with some exchanges in that country, and actually relationships with businesses in that country as well, I think it makes sense. If to the degree that we need to comply, we will comply as much as possible, looking out for the best in the long-term interests of the investors and the organization. But to the extent that that infrastructure does not exist and we feel that we can do it on our own, we'll do it on our own.
Okay. Another question, do we have services that are being hosted or supported by LPC masternodes already, such as platforms or services that depend on LPC?
Right now, no. We built the infrastructure for services to be built. With that said, if you were to look at the various platforms like Ethereum is a platform upon which other ICOs or other coins or cryptocurrencies can be launched. When you look at EOS or Cardano or ADA Cardano, it's the case that these are platforms. What we're doing now in this bear market, and this typically happens with most markets, when new technologies come up, there's a bubble, and after the bubble bursts, and then it's the case that there's a redesign, infrastructure, there's a rebuilding, and there's a consolidation that takes place. That's where a lot of the building takes place. In this bear market that we're in right now, we're doing a lot of integrations. Right now, we're already integrated in a new masternode-based blockchain type services called BlockNet. With BlockNet, we can already do cross-chain atomic swaps. We can already build dApps, including LGS and LPC. That's already in place. Right now, we need a lot more programmers. We need people who are able to build on top of the pipes that we already have in place. Blockchains have already been built on top of BlockNet. So you do have a platform that is BlockNet, where LPC sits, where dApps can be created by programmers in this space. And that's what we need. So right now, the foundation for us, if you're looking to build an application or decentralized application, we're already on BlockNet. Like I said, we're already able to do cross-chain atomic swaps. We're already able to build dApps. So which can't integrate more than one currency. So that platform has already been built. We're already on that platform, but it's at the point now where we're still continuing down our roadmap just to build our base product, and that is the point of sale device. So at this point, yes, it is something that we're doing. The infrastructure is there. It just takes an individual with the initiative or a group of individuals with the initiative to execute on that. I hope that makes sense.
Okay, then there's a question about Telegram. So in the Telegram channels, why are you allowing spam? And I think there's an example here. It says Telegram's #1 signals group.
Telegram's #1 signals group. I'm not quite sure on the issue of allowing spam, if it's something that's spam. I don't really control that channel. I'll talk with the other devs on the team to bring that. Now that you brought that up, I'll actually go back to the team and mention it as well. It's something. So if you can be more specific as to what you're talking about, can you give me a little bit more detail?
Sure. All right. Let's see. If the question asker writes, I'll let you know. But if not, maybe that's a DM or something on the Discord channel or the Telegram, perhaps.
Send me details. I'm a Xanthic on Telegram, and I'm also a Xanthic on Discord. Please send that to me if it's the case that there's spam that shouldn't be there. No, we're going to get rid of it. So okay. It's not something. We have 101 things that are like coming across my desk and the other devs, GM channels and communication channels.
Okay. Next question. In what country were the ICOs of LPC and LGS registered? Are these projects subordinated to the SEC? I guess, are they subject to review by the SEC?
No, we had several conversations. We had several conversations with some of the top lawyers in the United States. We also had conversations as well, and some interactions with enforcement attorneys at the SEC, because we did not do an ICO. And I'd like to clarify that and make it crystal clear. We did not do an ICO. Thus, we have no need to register anywhere. Because that is the case, we don't fall under the jurisdiction of the SEC. So I'll leave it at that.
Cool.
One, we did not do an ICO. And two, we don't fall under the jurisdiction. At the same time, we're not a security in any way. You can go to our website, download our white paper, and we do have our legal opinion from our attorney in terms of us not being a security. So we have taken great care to make sure that we are able to protect and the people who have invested within LPC, to make sure that we are following all of the rules that we are able to follow, because this is a new industry, and by all definitions, we have not done an ICO. We're not considered a security based upon the legal opinion of our attorney and conversations with various attorneys across the United States and our interaction with the SEC.
Okay, great. And that's all the questions that we have out there, I believe, at this point. So.
Okay, definitely thank you for your time, folks. And at the same time, it holds strong. There are a lot of things that are coming at a macroeconomic level. Pay attention to the news. Listen out for the upcoming rate increases. At the same time, look at what's happening with the trade wars and begin to look at how you can begin to position yourself to do well during these downturns. Not to exploit chaos, but at the same time, use it to where you're in a good position now if you actually own a part of this asset class.
Very good. See you all next week.
Thanks for your time, folks.